So today we will start with the role and status of multinational corporations under international law. So being the subject of international law, we have to observe what extent the international law confers right and duties on the multinational corporations. As we seen the role of individual in international law, we have to see the role of international institutions latter, not in the part of subject, but we also seen the role of state. So state are the major stakeholders in the international law. So today we will see role and status of multinational corporation. Now, why multinational corporations? Because the multinational word itself indicate that the it will cover it covers those corporations which were working in more than one nations. In such situation, it is but natural that they should have certain right and duties under international law in order to bring the harmony among the nations where they work, because there may be a problem of environment degradations, problem of the accident relating to poisonous gases into factories, etc., as well as the disputes relating to investments into that particular corporation by state, by the citizens of particular state where corporation is working, because they has their office in one nation and they work in other nation. Therefore the question of jurisdiction may arise the country in which the case has to be filed. The same thing was arose in case of Bhopal gas disaster also, that we will see. So why multinational corporations are important? Because they contribute to the economic and technological development of the societies, but also they harm the human right and damage the environment, or even they can commit crime. How? That we will see. So the national legislation is often unable to create a stable regulatory environment in which multinational corporations can operate, as well as to exercise control over the harmful acts of the entities with their activities globally, because they operate in decentralized network structures and flexibly relocate their operations from one nation to another nations. Therefore, economically weaker states depend on the investment of MNCs and may be unwilling to enact and enforce demanding human rights and environmental standards in order to enhance their attractiveness to foreign investor, because the weak state may give them certain relaxations so far as environment clearance and other formalities are concerned. In such environment, and the inadequacy of domestic legislation to effectively regulate MNCs. They moved, or the activities of MNCs has moved the focus to the level of international, because national law is found to be inadequate to regulate MNCs. Therefore, one can see towards the international law whether international law have certain provisions or can impose obligations on multinational corporations. So there were two factors which can be discussed here relating to MNCs. So firstly, acknowledging the beneficial effects of international business, efforts have been made to provide companies with a stable environment by granting them right under international investment and international human rights law. So, and secondly, because every state want to expect that the multinational corporations will come to their country and they can invest there. So even India is calling Japan and all other aftermath of the Chin controversy, China controversy. So we are having a stable environment for working here. So every state demands so. So first is that. Secondly, reacting to the repeated reports about the involvement of MNCs in human rights abuses, grave environment damages, and crime, a number of initiatives have aimed at holding companies accountable under international human rights, environmental law, and criminal law. So, glaring example of this is the Bhopal gas disaster in India. So, in this context, it is important to discuss whether MNCs are subject of international law and whether they have right and obligations under international law. So, the focus will lie on four legal fields whose recent developments have particularly impacted the status of multinational corporations under international law. Those are human right protection and responsibilities. Secondly, investment protections. Thirdly, environment obligations. And lastly, accountability for international crime. So within these four corners, we have to study the role and status of multinational corporation. But first, we will see what is mean by multinational corporations. So, but the name itself indicate. So, in the United Nations framework, the term multinational corporation was originally used and defined as enterprise which own or control two things: own or control production or service facilities outside the country in which they are based. Simply, the country in which it is based, and in one country it is based, and in another country it is work. So, the second definition was given by United Nations draft norms. It was not yet finalized on the responsibilities of transnational corporations and other business enterprises with regard to human rights. So one another name is there for multinational corporation is transnational corporations. So there was a draft rules in 2003. It says that transnational corporations as an economic entity operating in more than one country. This definition is simple as compared to others. Operate in more than one country or a cluster of economic entities, group, operating in two or more countries, whatever their legal form, whether in their home country or country of activity, and whether taken individually or collectively. Then in simply, we can say they usually comprise companies or other entities established in more than one country and so linked that they may coordinate their operations in various ways. So they may wind up from one country because they are already settled in another country. So while and they were legal entities on their own. So human beings working in the corporations are not generally accountable because corporation has a distinct legal entity. Yes. Now we will go towards directly whether these multinational corporations are subject of international law or not, or if yes, up to what extent. So the central debate on MNCs in international law focuses on the question of whether or not they are subject of international law. So it is a debatable issue even today. Why? That we will see. Subject of international law, that is, whether they are capable of possessing international right and duties and have capacity to maintain their right or enforce their right by bringing international claims. So traditionally, international law was pursued as governing only the mutual transaction between sovereigns, we've seen already. So with the rise of international organizations, international human rights law, however, the small circle of subject of international law was gradually expanded and it covers several other aspects into it. So the non-state actors particularly means corporations. So positivist asserts that the states which remain the primary subject of international law can upgrade non-state actors to subject of international law by endowing them with right and obligation. So the function is conferred upon the state. that state can recognize these non-state actors as their part. So non-state actors thus derive their subjectivity from states and are depend upon the legal recognition by the state concerned. इन शॉर्ट, त्या राष्ट्राला ही परवानगी देण्यात आलेली की तुम्ही तुमच्या राष्ट्रामध्ये असलेले काही नॉन स्टेट ऍक्टर्स असतील म्हणजे कंपनीज असतील त्यांना तुम्ही कायदा करा आणि कायदेशीर मान्यता द्या. म्हणजे त्यांना तुमच्याच ज्युरिस्डिक्शन मध्ये ठेवा, जरी ते एमएनसी असतील तरी. म्हणजेच त्या त्या राष्ट्राच्या लॉवर अवलंबून राहतील, आंतरराष्ट्रीय लॉवर नाही, वेगळ्या शब्दात. So this was initial approach laid down by the positivists. So adhering to these formal prerequisites, the large majority of international legal scholars hold that MNCs do not possess international legal personality. तर याचा कन्क्लुजन असं झालं की एमएनसी त्याच्यामुळे इंटरनॅशनल पर्सनॅलिटी होत नाही, जसं ते राष्ट्र कायदा करून त्या कंपन्या आपल्या राष्ट्रामध्ये रेग्युलेट करतील. मग एमएनसी असेल, 3 राष्ट्रामध्ये एमएनसी काम करत असेल तर ते 3 राष्ट्र आपापल्या राष्ट्रामध्ये आपापल्या कायद्यानुसार एमएनसी ची नोंदणी करतील, एमएनसी चे कारभार बघतील तिथल्या युनिटचा. म्हणजे ते त्या राष्ट्राच्या कायद्यानुसार चालतील, त्यांच्यासाठी स्वतंत्र इंटरनॅशनल लॉ नसेल. दिस वॉज द इनिशियल अप्रोच अबाउट द मल्टीनॅशनल कॉर्पोरेशन्स. So a few international legal scholars, on the other hand, have recognized MNCs as a subject of international law. Some have adopted a de facto approach based on their significant participation at the international. So up here also there is a difference of opinion among scholars. Some are saying national law will regulate, some are saying there were certain principles under international law dealing with MNCs. So certain are quoted here. So first we will see the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR. So the countries which were the components of European Union, they are having their different convention. जसं जनरली UDHR आपण पाहिलं, युनिव्हर्सल डिक्लेरेशन ऑन ह्युमन राईट, तसंच युरोपीय राष्ट्रांसाठी युरोपियन कन्व्हेन्शन ऑन ह्युमन राईट आहे. त्याकडे सेपरेट कोर्ट पण आहे परत, युरोपियन कोर्ट ऑफ ह्युमन राईट्स, ECHR. So here under the European Convention on Human Rights, companies enjoy a right to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. Article 46, sorry, access to court. That public hearing to tribunal means access to court, equality of arms, and reasonable length of the proceeding. Frequently, media companies invoke the convention on the ground of alleged violation of right to freedom of expression. Because today, the media houses were run even by multinational companies. If we look into BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, being a multinational corporation working its media houses in several countries. Now these media houses are having, sorry, these media holders are having freedom of speech and expression under European Convention on Human Rights, particularly Article 10.1. It says that they enjoys the right to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. So, international convention confer rights on MNCs. And the example is Article 10 Clause 1 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Even UDHR, several conventions confer rights. In short, those who are in favor that MNCs are subject of international law, they put forth these arguments. One case is there, that is the Society Colors East SA and others versus France. You may study this case from study material. This was decided in 2002. Herein, the claimant sued France over raids of their business premises by investigators acting without a court warrant, arguing that their right to respect for their home had been violated, because European Convention on Human Rights confers the right to a secured home to every person. So here, the business premises were raided without the authority of court, without the warrant issued by the court, and same action was challenged, action of the France government. So here, the European Court on Human Rights, the case was tried by European Court on Human Rights. They held that the character of the conventions as a living instrument required a dynamic interpretation of the provision to accommodate for changing conditions, and it referred to the fact that companies enjoy a series of rights under the European Convention on Human Rights, and concluded that the time has come to hold that in certain circumstances, the right guaranteed by Article 8 of the Convention may be construed as including the right to respect for a company's registered office, branches, or other business premises. In other words, these business premises are the home for companies. So, Article 8, Clause 1 of European Convention on Human Rights provides that everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home, and its correspondence. So, the larger liberal interpretation is given, and it was held as companies' premises were considered as companies' home. Therefore, they are entitled to take protection of the European Convention on Human Rights. So, these are the conventions. Apart from this, international human rights protection for companies was also laid down in the United Nations Human Rights Committee, International Covenant on Civil and Political Right, Article 18, that is, legal entities may enjoy certain rights under covenant, freedom of religion, belief, freedom of association, trade unions. However, according to Article 1 of the optional protocol is an amendment made to particular convention. ICCPR says that only individuals can claim the violation of their right before Human Rights Committee, and companies therefore have to rely on domestic forum in order to obtain protection of their rights. As per so, these convention ICCPR particularly is applicable to individual human being only. So companies being individual has to approach the country within which cause of action arises. Then the American Convention on Human Rights, on the other hand, explicitly accords human rights protection only to human beings. So here also there is inconsistency between the convention to convention. Certain conventions restrict their right for human beings only. Certain says persons, certain says individuals likewise. So again, the companies have to see particular conventions whether they have conferred right on them or not. That is to be disclosed from the wording used in the particular convention. So companies can bring petition before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, but only for victima on behalf of natural person. It means their natural person must be a victim, say director of company, shareholders of company. They are natural persons. If their rights are violated, company can approach as per American Convention on Human Rights. So these are the arguments put forth by those scholars who says that yes, MNCs are subject of international law because they have mentioned under international law. But others says even though they are having mention under international law, they cannot approach before international forum. They have to approach through the state within which they are functioning. So with this, we will move towards another segment, that is international investment law and the provision made under for MNCs. So this law means it is the collection of the different convention. It is not law like Indian Penal Code, etc. Here, though it is called as a law, it is the collection of certain conventions which deals with the law relating to international investment. So under this, the international investment law grant MNCs the most robust right, such as the customary international law, bilateral and multilateral investment treaties. What we are talking about, the foreign direct investment into different countries, that is regulated through international investment law and particularly through treaties. So investment treaties in short, it may be bilateral, multilateral, as well as agreement between MNCs and host state. Suppose if Microsoft want to invest into India, they will enter into a treaty with India, simple trade treaty, and accordingly, as per the Indian FDI norms recognized by Indian Parliament, they can invest. So they can establish a set of rules for protection of foreign direct investment. So customary international law requires for that for an expropriation to be lawful, that it is undertaken in the public interest without arbitrariness and discrimination on the basis of nationality and accompanied by the payment of compensation. Because if there is a expropriation policy of the government, expropriation means to acquire corporations for public purposes. In such situation, provision has to be made into the treaties, like disinvestment from the public corporations. So for this respect, the MNCs has to make provision. जर उद्या भारताची नीती बदलली, पॉलिसीज बदलल्या आणि त्यांनी जर डिसइन्व्हेस्टमेंट सुरू केलं किंवा ऍक्विजिशन सुरू केलं, तर ह्या होल्डिंगचं काय वगैरे याबद्दलच्या तरतुदी त्या ट्रीटीज मध्ये केल्या जातात आणि मग ते ठरवलं जातं. So in the late 1950s, the several bilateral investment treaties were made to invite the foreign direct investment. Today, approximately 3,000 bilateral investment treaties are in force in India. However, no uniform standard exists for the treaties, such bilateral investment treaties. It contains the provision on the following questions generally: personal and temporal applicability, definition of investment, treatment of foreign investment, expropriation, currency transfer, and dispute settlement. Major these issues were dealt with in those treaties. So here the contracting parties commit to observing certain standards with regard to foreign investors, such as fair and equitable treatment, full protection and security is to be given, as well as non-discrimination on the basis of nationality, religion, race, caste, etc. The latter requirement means that foreign investors may not be discriminated against, because the investments may be there by the citizens of that particular country. In such instance, there may not be a discrimination between two or no favorable treatment to the citizens of that particular country, etc. So, both compared to nationals of the host state and the investors from the third countries, that is most favored nation treatment and national treatment. These two treatments were prevailing in case of investment. National treatment means treatment given to our own citizens. Reliance is an Indian brand, but Microsoft and others were for America, etc. So they were most favored nation for investment, and treatment given to them is a most favored nation treatment. So there should not be a discrimination within these two things, and that has to be seen by that particular nation and not by international. So it also contains the provision for settlement of the dispute over investment, and this dispute can be filed before the court established by that particular country. Like we are having competition commission of India, if there is dispute relating to competitions, we are having income tax tribunals likewise. So company law, CLAT, we are having company law appellate tribunal, then Supreme Court. So they have to take recourse to these remedies only. So even there are comprehensive rules made for arbitration by United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, that is called as UNICITRAL. And one convention is there, International Center for Settlement of Settlement of Investment Dispute. So these has to be brought by the concerned state before these forums. However, these bilateral investment treaties have been criticized for restricting the regulatory freedom of the host country and thereby hindering legislations for the protection of human rights and environment. So, the norms relating to human rights or environment are said to be compromised by these kind of treaties. So, recent bilateral investment treaties take these objections into consideration and contain exceptional clauses to account for public interest. That's what we had an amendment into the Companies Act, like corporate social responsibility clause we had introduced, wherein any company has to be contributed from certain percentage from their profit towards the corporate social responsibility mandatorily. That's what you are founding, that certain beautifications were made on the street and the name of companies you will found. That is the CSR initiative by particular corporations. Even in education, scholarships, several things were done through CSR. So we will go towards other laws or other obligations under international law imposed apart from investment law. Second is international human rights law. Now we have discussed these because whatever applicable to individual is equally applicable to MNCs, because persons, human rights, certain human rights were conferred upon persons, certain upon individuals. So here, under international human rights law, MNCs can directly impact human rights in the societies they operate. Example, by employing children or forced workers, by operating on the territories of indigenous people, what we called as tribes, those living in forest, their lands were taken by the MNCs. They employ child labor, etc. So their consent. So by using discriminatory recruitment policies, no norms for recruitment, no reservations, or no legal requirements are followed for recruitment, no advertisement, etc., or by damaging the environment and thus endangering the life and health of people. So these things were done by MNCs. So they come across with the violation of human rights. So they can also indirectly cause harm if they create incentives for state authorities to violate human rights for business purposes, or if they support regime engaged in human rights violation by providing infrastructure, financial means, or international credibility. So states supporting the MNCs, and indirectly therefore states are participating in the violation of human rights with MNCs. Therefore, the current international human rights law, however, states are the primary duty bearers and obliged to respect human rights and to ensure their protection against abuses by private actors. So state have to keep watch upon them. But due to the increasing corruption in every aspect, these things were compromised at large scale. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that every organ of society, so a term which possibly includes MNCs, so every organ, it includes MNCs, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. However, this statement is only contained in the preamble, which has not hardened into customary international. So UDHR, though make a provision. But again, whether that is to be made applicable or not is to be decided by the particular nation. Then if we look into ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we've seen already there is a Human Rights Committee, and it was expressly stated there that the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights observed with regard to the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights that private enterprises are not bound by the covenant. Further, Article 1 of the ECHR, European Convention on Human Rights, binds only the high contracting parties to secure to everyone with their jurisdiction the right and freedoms defined in Section 1 of this convention. High contracting parties mean state because MNCs were never party to international convention. Who is party? India, America, Bangladesh. Again, treaty we are going to see. And it is their responsibility to control MNCs operating within their territory. So, by this way, even human rights dealt with the MNCs. Now we will see there were certain steps taken under international law to hold companies accountable on their own under international human rights law. That is draft responsibilities of transnational corporation we seen already 2003. Then OECD guidelines, then International Labour Organization conventions, etc. Then self-regulation, companies on their own, but that is happen in the least time, minimum times. So we can say here for human rights law, MNCs incur no direct legal obligations under international human rights law, and consequently, no enforcement mechanism under international law exists. The picture changes, however, if one take a look at the national level, where MNCs have been sued for human rights abuses before civil and criminal courts. So ultimately, it comes to the come towards particular nation. Now, second, third, that is international environment law. First, we had seen investment law, second, human rights, third, environment, and fourth, crime. So, for environment, multilateral environmental agreements are there, which addressed the primarily at states and have at most indirect regulatory implications for MNC. So here also no direct obligation is imposed on MNC. Again, environment treaties are also imposing obligation on the state. So Stockholm Declaration, Rio de Janeiro declarations, Rio declarations, Nairobi declarations, several environment treaties are there, but nowhere the direct reference was there on the MNCs. So other aspect of the status of MNC under international law, we will see tomorrow. Okay, bye. See you tomorrow.